podcast where we're interviewing highly successful digital marketing agencies from across the country on how they've grown and scaled their agency. And I'm really excited. We've got a very special guest with us today. Jason Hennessey from Hennessey Digital has grown his agency to over $20 million per year. Recently had an exit, is I think known as the top SEO agency in the legal space. And I know he does more than SEO, but he's a brilliant mind in terms of business, SEO, and now acquisitions. Guys, if you're excited, drop a comment here in the chat. If nothing else, just Jason or SEO. Jason, thanks so much for being here, man.
Josh, man, it's an honor. I appreciate it. I've been excited for this, just to kind of share my story. It's been a journey, 10 years in the making with this agency, but 21 years in SEO. So let's give some value here.
So good. So like, give us the lay of the land in terms of, $20 million per year. Like what is this kind of the state of the union in terms of Hennessey Digital at this moment?
Yeah. So at this stage, I think our run rate, we're probably doing about $1.9 million per month, I say, is our run rate. We're aiming for about a $7 million EBITDA at the end of this year. We are focused on just growth, profitability, kind of keeping the balance. We've got an amazing team. And I've got so many lessons to share on this podcast, like the pitfalls that I made, that some of the agency owners or business owners, for that matter, on this podcast, can avoid, I guess. Yeah.
So good. I look forward to hearing those lessons. And first of all, congratulations! Really amazing what you've accomplished. And a lot of people, when they think digital marketing agency in a niche, they're thinking, oh, maybe that's a a $5 to $7 million revenue possibility. But you're proving that you can really go deep by specializing in an industry and really becoming world class at it. Tell us a little bit about the journey. We don't need to hear like a long story, but how did you get into the agency game in the first place?
Yeah. So I got into the agency game, like most, you accidentally fall into this world of SEO. It started for me as a need back when I was going to college. I was running a mobile DJ company, and I built a website, and I taught myself this thing called SEO. Fast forward to about 2008, and I got asked to speak at a conference. It was in Atlanta, Georgia. I was living there at the time with my wife and my two boys, and they wanted me to go on stage to talk about this thing called SEO. And it was still sort of new. I mean, for the most part. And so I got on stage and I just talked about how I was able to rank for keywords that were related to the wedding industry. When I got off stage, I had about 7 attorneys come up to me and said, "That was awesome. I'm paying my SEO guy like $7,000 a month, and he's not doing any of this. Do you do consulting?" And so I left there with probably about 8 business cards, which then turned into about $35,000 in reoccurring revenue. And so that was the genesis to my agency, basically.
So good. So it was like a speaking opportunity. I'm a big proponent that stage time is money time. So any chance you have an opportunity to share value in front of a group of people, that's going to produce positioning. It's going to produce authority. So that was kind of the genesis. I also am a big proponent of choosing a vertical, positioning yourself as the expert in that space. How did you decide on the legal niche, and why did you go down that track?
Yeah, that, like, truthfully, going into that presentation, I wasn't even starting an agency, like, candidly, I was just going there just to kind of give value to people. And then when I got off stage and I had a couple people reach out saying, "Hey, do you do this, from a consulting perspective?" I'm like, "Not really, but I will." And so the first 6 clients, I guess, that landed in my lap were lawyers, right? Because that was a very niche industry. It's funny because if I would have spoken at a plumbing conference or something, like, might be working with plumbers right now, right? So it was just the world and the universe kind of aligning. And so then from there, then once you have some case studies, then it's very easy to go and pitch that and sell that to other lawyers. And then the lawyers are introducing you to their colleagues in other markets, and then they're telling you which conferences to go to, and they're introducing you to people in the industry. And Next thing you know, you're exhibiting at the conferences, then you're speaking at the conferences, you know what I mean? And then you're kind of
Mhm.
building up a personal brand over the years. So it was basically a haphazard accident, truthfully, how I got into this vertical. Yeah.
Love it. So went to a legal conference, did a presentation, got a lot of interest. That turned into a handful of 30 clients, like 30K in MRR almost right out of the gates, kind of
Hmm.
snowballed from there. Would love to know, like, did you consciously decide, okay, I'm going to stay inside legal, or did you take other industries for a period of time?
Yeah. I mean, we dabbled in some other industries. I think once you're starting to kind of build a name for yourself, you get other people that reach out and say, "Hey, can you also help, doing SEO in, this space or that space?" And so we've taken a couple clients, over the years that are, non in legal. But truthfully, there was so much blue ocean in legal that we were just trying to keep up with the demand. For the most part, even today, most of the business that we generate is from inbound leads,
Hmm.
just kind of leveraging our reputation and my personal brand. So we've never really had to go out and market per se, and part of the issue is because we only take on a certain level of client, right? And so I can't tell you how many times we've turned down lawyers that had like a $3,000 budget, right? And I would have felt bad just kind of taking their money just because like I wouldn't have been setting them up for success, right? If you got a
Hmm.
$3,000 budget and you're in Los Angeles, like I would
Get
feel
it. Yeah.
really bad about like taking your money, right? And so we wanted to make sure that we preserved our reputation, that we never took advantage of anybody. But we probably could have built a much bigger agency with probably not the best reputation if we just said
Mhm.
yes to everybody, So
I love that. So you prioritized not just the industry, but the top end of the industry where you can have the biggest impact. Retain clients. On that
mhm.
front, talk to us a little bit about what the package looks like, what you do for clients, how the pricing works. If you can talk about that from a high
Yeah.
level.
Truthfully, I had an agency before this, which I sold. It was called Everspark Interactive. It's still around and it's a great agency. And so me and my partners, we ended up like leaving. And so then when I basically went out on my own and I started this new agency, it's funny. I'm going to answer your question, but I'm kind of going like a long route here to talk about like why I started to charge more premium prices, right? And
Mhm.
what's included. But so basically what I did was I had this little pamphlet that I mailed out to like 50 attorneys in a market. It was really interesting concept. In fact, if people are listening to this, it actually works. So basically it was almost like a book, but it wasn't like a real book. It said like the SEO blueprint. And then it basically had like a cover letter on it. And it said, "You don't know me, but boy, do I know a lot about you. Your website generates about 2,000 visits per month. Your competitors, are generating, probably 50, 60,000 visits per month. Here's the value of their websites. Your value is only like 3,000. Their value is 80,000 if you use like the SEM Rush or the Ahrefs like chart." And so I sent that out to like 50 lawyers, physical mail, and I ended up getting like 5 responses and I set up 5 meetings. And so the one client that we decided to work with, rather than charge 5 grand a month, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to put a proposal in place that's 15 grand per month, right? I just want to have the ammunition that I need to really build an amazing case study. And so the client said yes. And then that was like that was my first client in this agency. And so we ended up doing content creation. We did link building, and I was basically everything, right? I was the manager, I was the SEO strategist. And the key was building that first case study. And then once we had that first case study, you can leverage that case study to go out and get other
Oh
clients.
yeah.
So,
I love that. So, like, really prioritizing out of the gates. Let's not just get clients into a cash grab. Let's
mhm.
crush it for the first client or for as many clients as we can, because that becomes a flywheel. That one client is, you can point back to them again and again, and other clients are going to be like, okay, cool, you're getting results there. I want to work with you guys. And
Correct.
you were only able to do that because you charged a larger fee, and you were to say, hey, let's go big and let's really make sure we knock it out of the park.
Correct. Yeah. So because I charged the larger fee, I had more resources and manpower to kind of get better results. And then once I had the case study, then yes, to your point, it's very easy to go out and say, hey, you're a law firm in this other market. Look at the case study that we've done here. If you want to work with us, our prices are 10 grand a month, right? As compared to like everybody was used to paying 3 to 5 grand per month in SEO, right? So it's funny, some of my competitors thank me, right? Because I
You
made it,
raised the ceiling for what was acceptable, right?
yeah, truthfully.
That's
Yep.
super cool. So you came right out of the gates with a premium offer and kind of have probably elevated from there. What does the packaging look like today at Hennessey Digital?
Yeah. So today we kind of break everything out. It's for the most part, it's customized based on the market, based on the needs of that firm. But our packages start out at about 8,500 bucks per month, and they kind of go up. We've had clients that spend over $100,000 per month just on SEO. And so it's broken out into strategy and consulting hours, right? So that's allows us to kind of strategize, put the content plan in place, do all of that. We usually join clients on a call every 2 weeks, so we're very in tune and easily able to adapt the strategy based on what's happening at the firm. We have a section for technical SEO, right? So we've got a group of engineers that kind of do that. We write a lot of content. So, we might be publishing 85 pages of content per month for some of our clients. And then sometimes we might only be publishing 15. Link building, digital PR, local SEO, basically there's kind of like line items for a lot of that stuff. And then at the end, it's usually like a monthly retainer that they pay us. Yep.
Got it. So in your case, it's very custom. It's like, all right, you're in New York, very competitive market. This is the competition landscape. This is what we think you're going to need. And it's going to be different for that client in New York than it is for the client in Tupelo or wherever else they might be.
Yes, correct. There's not like a good, better, best package that's universal for all. That's just not how we operate.
And it sounds like price points range from $8,500 a month up to, six figures a month,
Correct.
depending upon how large they are, how aggressive they're looking to grow, how competitive the market is.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Very cool. And is it within legal? Is it anybody in legal? Is it a specific type of legal that you specialize in?
So, for the most part, a majority of our clients are personal injury lawyers, and that is just because those are the attorneys that have high margins. They've got big advertising budgets, and they're the firms that are set up for kind of scale. The other thing about a personal injury lawyer is like, they are qualifying the prospect, right? So,
Mhm.
whether or not they want to take that case or not, right? So when somebody calls in, it's like, hey, this sounds like a great case. We'd be able to help. Or you know what, this is probably not in our wheelhouse. Maybe try to find somebody else, right? Because they're not getting somebody that's calling a personal injury lawyer doesn't have to reach into their wallet and pull out their credit card, right, to make a
Mhm.
deposit. It's
Yep.
all based on contingency, right? So personal injury lawyers, is kind of our sweet spot because of that. But then we also do work with some criminal defense lawyers, some family attorneys, things like that as well, which is a little different, right? Because a lot of times the people have to come out of
Right.
pocket to pay for those legal services. So,
Got
yeah.
it.
Mm.
Super cool. So we've got an idea like the niche is legal, higher end on the market. Kind of launched at a speaking conference. Started doing really focusing on delivering results to retain those clients to create a great case study. Let's talk a little bit about where the client deal flow comes from today. Like what kind of marketing strategies do you use to attract clients in the agency?
Yeah. So, like I said, most of the leads that come in are a byproduct of my personal brand, right?
Mhm.
Just when you've been doing something for so long, right? 2 decades, north of 2 decades, you built a brand for yourself, speaking on stages, going to conferences, sponsoring conferences. you know, over time you start to build up a pretty good reputation. And then we also tag, you know, some of our clients' websites, right? So people will be out in the market and do a Google search, and they see like our logo on the bottom of a website. So sometimes that will also generate some leads. But one of the coolest things that we did that I think really accelerated growth was really setting myself self up as a thought leader by writing a book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a couple years ago, I published a book. The book was titled Law Firm SEO.
Love it.
That was by design, because when people Google law firm SEO, I wanted to have a knowledge panel that would be on the Google SERP, and I don't have to pay for that knowledge panel. And my competitors are paying $40, $50 a click for that keyword, and we have that knowledge panel. Plus, you have like the Amazon page that you can build links to. You've got our website, you got my personal website, right? So if you Google that term, you'll see that we have like 4 different positions, right? And so, but the book has been amazing. Now we actually will send out a couple hundred copies of the book each month for free. We'll actually run Facebook campaigns, right? Saying, hey, would you like a copy of this book? Lawyers will basically say yes, and then we cover the cost of shipping and handling. So there's nothing, it's not like a digital book. They're physically going to get a book because we're going to
Mm-hmm.
mail it to them, right? So once they get inside my mind for, you know, a couple hours on a plane or something, you know, it's either A, I'm going to help them to grow their firm if they're going to take action, or if they want to just hire somebody else to do it. You know, a lot of times they'll reach out and want to potentially work with us.
So good. So it sounds like you've leaned heavily into the authority marketing play. Like there's
Mhm.
3 things that will make you the authority in any market: publish the book, speak at the events, and have case studies that verify you actually know what you're doing and you've got proven results. And it sounds like that's the 3 that you really have heavily invested in. And you're doing some like Dream 100 outreach type stuff where you're hand selecting attorneys,
Mhm.
mailing the book with. Does it still have that cover letter that's like, hey, if you need help, we're here.
Sometimes we'll do some experiments with that, but a lot of times it was just like they raised their hand, they wanted the book. A lot, like when it was unsolicited, I'd have the cover letter to like introduce myself. But being that they actually opted in and raised their hand, they already know who we are, so we're just mailing them a copy of the book. Yeah.
Super good. Love it. Love it. So
Mhm.
what is the sales team? Is there a massive sales team behind this? Is it a small, like, what does that
Yeah.
look like today?
So for years and years and years, like I didn't think anybody could sell as good as me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was I thought my zone of genius. And so I outsourced everything else except sales for a while. And then I realized, you know what? There might be people that are as good as me at selling or can even be better than me at selling. And so around the same time I brought in 2 sales guys, whether they're guys or girls, irrelevant, but these happen to be 2 guys. And so Rob and Brian, they came in both probably about 5, maybe 6 years ago. And I trained them both, and they just kind of shadowed me. And then eventually, they started to take their own sales calls and they started to bring in business and they started to probably get better at selling my services than I would, right? Because they can talk about me as the thought leader, right? And so there's something to be said about that. Like, oh, this is Jason's strategy. Jason did this, right? And so now they both tag team our sales department. We don't really do any outbound sales at all. Everything is purely inbound. And so they have a goal of closing about $60,000 per month in recurring revenue between the 2 of them. Some months they far exceed that. Like I think at the beginning of this year, the first 3 months of the year, I think they collectively both hit over $100,000 per month in recurring revenue. And then it kind of, you know, dropped off a little bit, but you know, they're exceeding their goals. Yeah. Mhm.
So good. So it's still basically 2 full-time salespeople. That's the whole sales team. Um,
Mhm.
Amazing validation here, right? Jason's grown to $20 million per year, completely inbound. Sounds like a little bit of advertising to offer the free plus shipping funnel for the book, but it's
Mhm.
predominantly, putting out great content, generating amazing case studies, being at the events and being the thought leader at the front, sharing what's really working in today's market and getting clients to come to you guys pre-positioned to buy, and then having a great consultative sales process that takes a prospect from interested to yes.
Correct. Yep.
So good. Brandon just had a follow-up question. I want to ask this because you guys that are on live, we're here with you live. So ask your questions. Brandon said, do you do any paid ads in addition to the personal brand route, which I think you already touched on, but if you want to elaborate.
Yeah. So well, the paid ads, we were doing some paid ads to give away the free copy of the book, right? So we're doing some social ads around that. We also experiment a little bit with some paid social, mostly to promote the personal brand. So you might see a Facebook ad. Actually, some of the stuff is kind of fun too. Like they'll make like a Indiana Jones version of me that they'll just kind of go and put out there on paid social, so like a lot of times it's like fun stuff too, that we use. But we do some experimentation there. Not a lot of money though is spent on paid.
So good. All right.
Mhm.
Who's Sam has a follow-up question here, and it is, do you do paid ads for clients as well these days, or is it just SEO?
So we do. So I never wanted to sell anything that I didn't think we were world class at. And so organic SEO was something that was my passion, right? And that was my obsession, let's just say. So I thought I was kind of world class at that. And then once I was able to experiment and get some great case studies to prove hypothesis and theories, I was very confident in selling that. For the longest time, I didn't sell anything else just because I didn't, that was not my passion.
Mm-hmm.
Then eventually I brought in team members that were equally as passionate about other services like paid marketing, that we started to sell it. And then once we got results and we got more results and we got positive feedback and we made adjustments, then we, put a push behind that and had our salespeople start to kind of sell that. Now we manage millions and millions of dollars per month in paid ads. When somebody hires us, they get the benefit of all of the experimentation that we've made for other clients, for the past couple years, right? And so we just know exactly which negative keywords to put in right off the bat. We know which landing pages convert better. We know which, there's so much that you get as a result of working with an agency like that, so.
So good. So I just want to come back to the sales team. You said you hired those two salespeople almost like at the same time. How large was the agency at that point? What would you say the annual revenue was approximately?
Yeah. So let's see here, 19. So at that time we were probably about, let's just say like 3.5, 4 million in revenue at the time, something
Perfect.
like
So
that.
to 3.5 million, you were still marketing, you were still selling, and
Mhm.
it wasn't until that point you put those two salespeople in place. Do you feel like that was an accelerant that helped to push you because now you had more free time to focus on bigger picture things, and you had people doing the sales day in and day out?
Yeah, that was key, but at the same time, I also brought in our COO
Mm.
and our CFO, right? So, um, and then we ended up bringing in a consultant as well, Cameron Harold, who
Nice.
you've had on your podcast here as
Yeah.
well. So yeah, so Cameron, we brought him in when we were just under 5 million in revenue because we wanted to get to 10 million. And so we went from 4 million to 8 million that 1 year. So that's with the addition of COO, CFO, two salespeople, and Cameron, in
Mm.
addition to others, but we really started to kind of focus on growth, and not really focused on profitability. And then from there, when you first start an agency, I'm sure there's people that are listening to this that are sitting on like 60% margins. You know what I mean? Like those were the glory days, right?
Right.
And so that was me. I was 60% margin when I first got started. But I was, married to the business, right? I mean, you can't go on vacations, you can't go to family dinners. You're always being pulled away, right? But there comes a point where you really need to delegate everything that you do so that you can focus on, like I said, whatever it is that is your zone of genius, right? And for me, I thought my zone of genius was sales, but it turns out there's people that can sell better than I can.
Hmm.
And they can sell when I am not even there, right? Which is the true power of growing a business. And so then I just really kind of doubled down on educating the market, creating video content, building my personal brand, speaking on stages, right? So that's really where I spent most of my time these days. And looking at like what is the biggest constraint in the business, and then how can I fix that, right? So that's where I spend a lot of my time.
So good. So kind of grew it to 3 million, started to develop the sales infrastructure and more importantly, the operational infrastructure so that you could really be the true visionary for the company. Talk to us a little bit about what that org chart looks like, just kind of high level if you can.
Yeah. I don't look at myself as a good manager.
Hmm.
And so I only have two direct reports. And so my COO, Scott, he's one direct report, and then my personal assistant, my executive assistant, not my personal, Catherine. So those are the only people that report to me. But then the org chart basically has like Scott. We have three executive C-suite people, right? So we got a COO, we have a CFO, and then we've got a CTO, right? So that's at the top. Then we've got VPs. VPs were that's something that a lot of agencies never really get to that point.
That middle management, right?
Yeah, the whole layered middle management, right? Because those are expensive hires that
Hmm.
that take from your margins, right? But it's so necessary if you want to scale. Like if you're on the threshold of like 10 million, that's around the time that you have to make those decisions, at least in my experience. And so we really went in and we brought in a great middle management, upper management, and hiring people that are way more qualified than I was at those specific tasks. And they basically allowed for us to really put systems and processes in to scale to the next level. It was a lot easier, truthfully, going from 10 million to 20 million than it was from 1 million to 10 million. Like, as weird as that sounds, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, I think it sounds like you really doubled down on finding people that play at what you have to work at, figuring out what your zone of genius is, and freeing yourself up so that you can focus in that zone of genius. And it sounded
Hmm.
like that was a massive catalyst to get you out of the $3 to $5 million range to the 8-figure range, all the way to 20 million and beyond where you are today.
Correct. The thing is though, when you're doing that, like it gets uncomfortable. Like if you're not careful, you can grow yourself out of business, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there were months where like even though you're making, so much money every single month, right? Once your payroll starts to kind of, grow and you've got executives and middle management, right? And then you've got a 3 payroll cycle, right? For that month. Like it gets stressful, right? In fact, there was a point where our margins had dropped all the way down to like 7%, right?
Mm.
And so that's really scary and it's uncomfortable. Especially if you've got clients that are taking up a large percentage of your overall spend too, right? Your overall income, right? So you got to be careful about making sure there's not like one client that's like 20% of your total revenue, because boom, you lose that client, you're kind of almost out of business, right? It's
Right.
scary. So yeah.
So that's where like the kind of you got to take that risk, right? If you're at 5 million and you've got a 30-40% profit margin and you want to go to 10 million, you're going to have to put that middle layer of management in place, and that's going to cut into profitability in the short term, and it's going to create more stress, and hopefully you make it over the hump. And when you do, that's where the true profitability starts to emerge again. And then really that's ideally if that's where you're headed, those are the types of decisions you have to make. John's got a great question here on this exact topic. He says, when profitability takes a backseat due to growth, how do you think about salary for yourself in that equation?
Yeah. So I was never really, I didn't have a lot of needs at the time. Like I was always kind of betting on the future, betting on the come, right? And so I just took what I thought I needed, and everything else was just kind of going back into the business. I think um, for most of my career, I took like $170,000 per year salary, right? And I think that was what my CPA told me like was probably the best salary that I could take while living in California. Everything else was then a distribution after that, and the distributions were just adjusted based on what I needed. But I was more focused on kind of growing the business, scaling, growing the business. I'd much rather go out and take the money that I could take and put in the bank today and put it into go finding like the best CTO or another salesperson or this, right? So I was fully vested into the growth at the time.
Super good. But it sounds like you did have caution around, like, I got to pay myself, even if the profitability drops to 7. I've got my 170K. I really do pay my bills and to live.
Yep.
You're not
Mhm.
like cutting in your personal living. And then you probably had like a radar that was like, when we get to 10% or less, we have to either really improve profitability, cut expenses, or make some adjustments, because that's really like, you don't want to dip below 10%.
Yeah.
Like 7% was probably a big red flag for you at that time.
Yeah, exactly. I had, Michelle and Scott that had that completely dialed in, so they knew exactly the moves that we can make. There was a point where, we were just growing so fast that we had 2 full-time recruiters, and we were just hiring people every single month. Like, if somebody would say, "Hey, I need 1 person in my department," we're like, "Here's 3," you know what I mean? Like, we're just, like, foolishly kind of doing that. And then we just realized, you know what, we need to kind of get more smarter about this. And then we had budgets, we stuck to budgets, and we basically started to operate with, how can you do more with less?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Love that. Super powerful, guys. If you're getting value, be sure to drop a 1 into the chat here. I'm gonna hit some questions, and then I want to get back to the main questions I've got for Jason. I do want to keep this centered around how he's grown, how he scaled, how he got to that exit, which is really exciting. But there's a question here from okay, a bunch of questions just came in. It was Brandon. Brandon's asking, I know you're heavy on SEO, and that's kind of your passion play. How do you see SEO shifting, or kind of your delivery with AI and with kind of AEO, GEO, whatever you want to call it, the generative engines, it's kind of shifting where search is going potentially?
Yeah. So, I think, there's so much kind of debate and speculation and all this stuff about, where the future is headed. And, it is certainly unprecedented times. We're doing a lot of studies and research, and we're trying to reverse engineer like probably most. But I think what we're noticing is that, SEO kind of remains to be the foundation of all. It's pretty obvious that ChatGPT is kind of pulling content directly from websites and sourcing that as the site. We're seeing a lot of that. Like, we're writing a lot of content for some of our clients that go after like zero search volume and zero competition. So, like, did you get injured at the Target in Plantation, Florida? You know what I mean? Like, stuff like that, right?
Mhm.
And if somebody types in like, who's the best injury lawyer, if I got injured at Target, and stuff like that, like, and then ChatGPT, like, we're getting leads for our clients as a result of these type of strategies and stuff like that. And so I would say just kind of don't really change the strategy. Certainly try to reverse engineer it in your niche. Like, we know that in the legal space, a lot of these big legal directories are sourced a lot, and so we give our clients homework on every one of our calls. So we'll say, hey, look, we're noticing that ChatGPT is pulling these sources. We recommend paying for this legal directory, or go join this association, or so like, but our clients basically that do their homework end up doing very well. So,
Super good. Yeah, it's an exciting time. Lots of things shifting on that front.
mhm.
Question here from Sean. He goes, "What's your advice for an agency at 2 million? Owner still doing sales and closing. Advice on finding a closer, structuring compensation. Any insights that you have on that front?"
Yeah. So if you're at 2 million, I would say try to find somebody that's hungry. They
Mm.
don't necessarily need to be an SEO expert per se. In fact, the 2 people that I hired to be salespeople, like one was just a good friend of many years that used to sell timeshares. And he
Oh,
was just like,
timeshare sales reps are strong, right?
yeah, right. So like I brought him in and then I taught him the SEO. And then the other, Rob, he was a former client of my old agency, right? So he was on the opposite end, like managing us, right? And so so there's probably somebody maybe in within your own network, right, that you can reach out to, that you know would do such a great job, that's accountable, that's reliable. In terms of like structuring, something that makes sense. You typically you have many different ways that you can kind of structure compensation. You can basically pay based on like whatever they bring in for their first month, or you can structure it. I think the way in which we do it, they get a commission based on like the first 15 or 18 months that the people stay with us, right? So there's many different ways that you kind of structure it. And then, obviously give them a base salary, something to live off of. You can do a draw initially, right? There's probably sales experts that are probably way more qualified than I am as coming up with. In fact, actually, there's compensation consultants. Like I think we brought in a compensation consultant, a
Mm.
guy by the name of Larry Comp, who came in to kind of help us structure this. So,
Super good. Yeah, I think the takeaway though, at 2 million, you can definitely afford to hire a salesperson for sure. Doesn't have to be an SEO person that has digital marketing experience. You can find someone that has sales skills and train them. Ideally, you're going to have some inbound, like what Jason has, like deals coming in. You don't want to just find a hunter that's supposed to go and create opportunities. And I'm a big fan. Base salary, 20 to 25% of their first month revenue,
mhm,
and don't hook yourself onto a large monthly residual, but it's
mhm.
going to vary based on your model and how you structure it. Sean, great question. Um, I don't want to get too technical, guys. I'm going to try and get back to some of these questions, but I want to shift gears a little bit because we've talked about kind of what the niche is, how you're landing clients, kind of what the program packaging looks like, and how you put it together. Let's talk a little bit about client retention because this is something I know you're passionate about. I'm super passionate about. How do you think about and approach retaining clients and kind of creating a world-class experience in addition to the results?
Yeah, that's everything, right? Because if like even if you're good at sales, right? If you've got a hole in the boat, right, where everything just kind of bleeds out, that's never a good, right? If your churn is operating higher than your sales, so you have to be careful. For one, I would say the first thing is you need to make sure that you are setting yourself up and setting your team up for success. So making sure that you have the right budget in place, to be able to get the results that you need to get for your clients. So for us, that's why everything is kind of more of like a bespoke plan instead of just like option A, B, or C.
Mm.
So that's the first thing. Having the ability to say no, like that's really hard, right? If you know that it's going to take $10,000 per month to really get real results, and they say, look, I've only got 3,000. Can we start there? It's very easy to say yes, right? But you're setting yourself up, you're setting your team up for failure. You're going to risk your reputation, right? So we never really made exceptions there. I'd rather kind of preserve the reputation and say no.
Mhm.
I think that's more important. Other things, having somebody in place that kind of oversees the client experience. What are all the things that we can do? Like one of the things that we do is we actually have a surprise and delight channel on Slack, and so that's where we have our team go and look for wins. Like what's something that we might be able to send our client today? It's like a Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. They're not expecting to hear from us. Let's go in, let's find a win. It's like, oh, great. Look, their leads have doubled this month. Let's just fire that over to them. Right.
Mhm.
So I think we call that surprise and delight. I think that can kind of get scheduled. It doesn't necessarily need to only happen on the regular schedule calls. The other thing is we meet with our clients regularly, right?
Mhm.
And so most cases we meet with our clients every 2 weeks, right? And so we're building deep relationships. There's times where like a client will jump on a call and they'll be like, oh yeah, my daughter saw this thing. She really wanted to go this Disney on ice, right? And so our account managers have budgets for that kind of stuff where they'll reach out to my assistant, and then my assistant will send over like a VIP package, just kind of a surprise and delight, like stuff like that. So really building deep relationships and friendships with our clients, I'd say.
So good. So creating great results is a big piece of the equation.
Mm.
Really checking in with the client on a consistent basis, and it seems like every 2 weeks at a minimum with you guys. It's a
Yep.
ritualized process. I heard, giving the client homework so that they're looking at you as a strategic partner, not just a vendor doing work on the back end, but you guys are in this together.
Yep.
And then listening for the unexpected surprise and delight moments where they just had a baby or they want to do something special, and your account managers are empowered to do those little things that go a long ways to show that you really care about them as an individual, in
Yep.
addition to a client that's paying a retaining fee.
And the one that I missed, I think is probably the most important, is managing expectations from the
Mhm.
very start, right?
Yeah.
So whenever we're on a sales call, if somebody comes to us and they're like, hey, I've got a good budget, but I'm just getting started. I just bought this domain name from GoDaddy. You know what I mean? Like we always try to manage expectations.
Mhm.
In fact, I posted something on LinkedIn about a birth injury website. I built birthinjurylawyer.com. And I knew that the budget that we needed to be competitive was about $30,000 per month, right? And I knew
Mhm.
it was going to be about a 2-year journey before we even saw our first lead.
Mhm.
And so I just managed the expectations with my client, who then turned to be my partner. And so now I have a partnership in that website. But I just knew right off the bat that, look, we're going to need real firepower because birth injury cases are very high dollar cases, and this is a long-term journey, right? So
So good. Love that. I think another key, in your front is charging enough to be resourced enough to be able to do what the client needs in order to get the result, and to be able to, put that extra account management time and that extra, gifting budget, and not worry about how that's going to dip into your profitability.
yep, exactly.
So good. So many great insights and takeaways there. Let's talk about scale, right? So, you scale the agency now to $20 million per year. I know you've learned a lot of lessons. Like, what are like 2 or 3 key things that you feel like, man, I wish I had realized that would have made it so much easier?
Yeah. So I mentioned, getting a coach at 5 million.
Mhm.
This is a good plug for Josh, right? Because he's got probably one of the best coaching services. And I'm not just saying this, it's part of my journey. I manifested my coach, when I had my old agency and I was only doing like maybe 1 million per year. I saw this TED talk of Cameron Herold talking about how to raise entrepreneurs, how to raise your children to be entrepreneurs, right? Instead of doctors and lawyers. And it just resonated with me because I was always an entrepreneur as a kid. And so it was just awesome. And I said, some point, like, I'm going to hire this guy to be my coach, right? So I bought his books, I followed him on social media. And then once I hit 5 million in revenue, I knew that, like, this is my guy. I'm going to reach out to him. I'm going to send the best email I could write. And so I wrote this very clever, witty email. He received it. He wrote back, that was the best email I ever received. Yes, I'd love to coach you guys. Let's set up a call. So we brought him on, and he just kind of gave us all the cliff notes of, like, what are the things that we should be doing? What are the things that we should stop doing? He said, do you have an assistant? I said, no. He goes, if you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant, right? And so that was the first homework that I got, was to go get an executive assistant. And I was able to kind of delegate a lot of the things that I was doing. He actually came up with this very clever way to kind of track my time. And it turns out that I was probably doing like a lot of $20 per hour tasks,
Mhm.
right? And so there's only so much time in a day. And if you're spending your time doing stuff that's worth $20 per hour, how can you ever get to the point where you can be doing stuff that's $2,000 per hour that you would charge, right? And
Yeah.
so I was able to delegate some stuff to my executive assistant. I found it amazing. She's been with me 5 or 6 years. She has like 3 executive assistants under her now, right? So she's delegating things, and it's just a great process. So I would say start with maybe getting a coach, and getting an executive assistant. Those are 2 game changers for me.
So good. Love it. I want to shift gears now because I know we got to be respectful of your time. You've now I don't even want to say exited, because you sold the agency and kind of rolled up to something bigger. Talk to us about that. And I want you guys to, in chat, if you have an aspiration to potentially sell your agency in the future, or position yourself for an exit, which we should all, type exit into the chat, because Jason's going to talk a little bit now about how he was able to make that pivot and actually, sell his agency, which has his namesake, Hennessey Digital, and sell it. So talk to us about that journey, Jason.
Yeah. So if and when you are looking to sell a agency or a business, like, it's a strategy, right? And it's a strategy that, in my experience, takes a couple years. And so I say that because, you have to start to establish relationships with potential buyers. You have to start having those meetings. You want to learn, like, what it is that that they can bring to the party. And so our journey was going to be about a 3-year journey, right? So in 2024, that was the first year of our journey, where we're like, okay, first we need to start focusing more on profitability, right? Because if you ever want to sell a business or an agency, the main driver is your EBITDA, right? And so we wanted to focus. So we stopped maybe going to some conferences. We stopped doing fancy dinners. We stopped, maybe pulled back on some marketing, but right. So it was just all kind of by design. And so that's basically it. And then our goal was, we were going to get the EBITDA up to about 5 million in 2024. We were going to get the EBITDA up, to maybe like 8.5, 9 million in 2025, 2026, try to get it north of 10 million, and then look at selling in maybe, January, February of 2027, right? That was kind of the goal. And then once we started to kind of take meetings, we knew that it needed to be the right fit for our clients first, right? So that was key. It needed to be the right fit for the clients. The second would have been our team, right? So our employees. And then third would have been me, selfishly, right? So, like, those are the three in that order, right? So is this a good fit for the clients? Is it a good fit for my team? Is it a good fit for me, right? And so any meeting that we took, we needed to make sure that we checked those 3 buckets, right? So we've taken meetings where this is not going to be the right fit for our clients. You know what I mean? Like, nope, even though, like, it could have been much richer for me, not the right fit, right? Or this is a private equity group that has a reputation of, like, the moment that they buy the agency, they just start cutting people and trying to improve the EBITDA, and then they, try to, like, sell it again another year, right? Like, that wouldn't have been the right fit, right? So anyway, we started to take some meetings, and then we got approached about 8 months into our journey by the private equity group that we ended up selling to, and it was just perfect fit. We knew it. We started having some amazing conversations. We were aligned on core values. We were aligned on culture. It just seemed perfect, right? And so the deal surfaced. We moved into LOI. We then moved into purchase agreement. And 7, 8 months later, we ended up exiting to them, and it was a great experience. But when I say I exited, it wasn't that, like, Jason was just gonna go and live on an island and swim in money. Like, it wasn't like that at all. Like, I'm more excited about the future, working with our private equity group now, just because I've always built my business based on a bootstrap budget. But now, when you have access to real capital, you can accelerate the growth. It's funny, my team only gives me like 3 big ideas that I can implement every year, because that's what our budget calls for. I probably have about 10 like big grandiose ideas that I'd love to, like, bring to life, but unfortunately our budget can't accommodate that. But now, having real access to capital, a lot of the ideas that I kind of bring to the table can even get implemented. So there's so much value for our clients as well.
So good. So the smart move, obviously, you grew revenue, right? You put systems and team in place. You said, okay, I'm going to start to think about an exit into the future. What do I have to change, right? And the key thing you've got to optimize for, the value of your agency is in your EBITDA, which is basically your profitability. If you get high profit, that means you're going to get a bigger buyout, right? That's the bottom line. And so you started to really be strategic with being more efficient with the spending. And then you found the right buyer quicker than you were expecting, which was great. I think it's really cool what you're doing in that, this wasn't an exit and walk. Like you're like really all in with Hennessey. You're still the CEO. You're still innovating for the team and for the clients. You're now part of a bigger opportunity.
Yeah, and I am on the board of the parent company that owns Hennessey Digital.
Mm-hmm.
I am responsible or helping to find other agencies to acquire. I'm trying to help find other companies to bolt on to the services of the legal core competency that we have, like other agencies to acquire there. So it's great. It's like I'm playing at a much higher level,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a very large shareholder now in the parent company, which is called Herringbone Digital. And so I know that we'll be. You gave us the opportunity to come to your conference, in Miami, and so we're excited to kind of talk a lot more about that journey too there in person. So.
Oh yeah, really, really excited to have you guys and kind of
Mhm.
go deeper on these topics at the Seven Figure Agency Member Intensive. Jason, I know that you're part of that spearheading process to acquire right fit agencies into Herringbone. If somebody was interested and say, "Hey, I'd love to, connect with you and see about maybe if you guys want to buy my agency," or what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so I think if you're growing your agency, the things that we're looking for specifically in the thesis that we're building with Herringbone Digital is we're focused on 4 verticals, right? So legal is one vertical. We have home services is a second vertical, which I know there's a lot of great agencies out there that cater to that. Medical would be the third, and the fourth is dental. So those are the 4 verticals that we are actively looking to buy agencies in. Um, uh, tr- Typically, we look for at least 1 million in EBITDA
Mm-hmm.
for us to kind of begin the conversation. But if you have entertained those conversations, we're looking for great founders that, for the most part, are looking to join something big where, it's not like you're going to basically hang your hat and retire after you sell, like, join something much bigger to potentially kind of take this and exit again in 5 years, right? So you get 2 bites from the same apple, maybe even 3 if potentially it can go public. I mean, there's so much future here. I consider myself young still. I'm 48,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't ever see myself retiring. I'm not doing this for the money at this point. I think I'm at a point in my life where my kids, my grandkids will be fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm doing it just to kind of build a great business that really adds value to our clients, and I've got the right partner in doing so. So it's exciting.
I love that. Yeah, I think it's really exciting what you guys are doing at Herringbone, and that it's not just like, let's do a cash grab here. You really want to become the very best digital marketing agency for the industries that you serve. And
Mhm.
the agency founders that are passionate about delivery, that have high growth, that want to be part of something like that might be a really great fit. And I think it's unique in the marketplace. I think a lot of times it's just the owner is just going to get their payout and they want to go start something else and kind of just move on with their lives. And
Yeah.
so, very cool. So if you're in that range and you're, interested, reach out to what would be the
Yeah,
best way to
absolutely.
connect?
You could reach out to me on LinkedIn, send me a DM or Instagram or Facebook, wherever it is that we're connected. Highly encouraged to connect with me. I try to put out, little bites of wisdom, I guess, that I've kind of learned over the years. So definitely connect. And if you are in that range, I would love to speak with you. We've got a great team at Herringbone Digital that I can connect you with. So we'd be happy to talk for sure.
Super
Mhm.
cool. All
Mhm.
right, I still got a bunch of questions here. So, Jason, I want to be respectful of your time. Are you good if we do go through a couple
Yeah,
of these
let's
questions?
let's do it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So Andrew's got a couple questions that are probably specific, and if you can't answer it, you don't want to answer it, that's fine. But he's asking, what was the EBITDA exit? Like maybe even a range you could say that is probable for agencies.
Yeah, we were just under 5 million in our EBITDA when we exited. So I think we were closer to like 4.8 is
Okay.
where we were. Yeah.
And then in
Mhm.
terms of the multiples on the acquisition.
Yeah, I'd say like when you're in that range, you're probably looking anywhere from like a 5 to 10 time multiple, I'd say.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
super good. And it's gonna vary, right? If you get acquired by a PE firm, you're probably gonna get a larger multiple than if you get acquired by somebody buying you from like Biz Buy Sell or something like that. Like it's a very different strategic acquisition. So like
Mm-hmm.
kind of that 5 to 10 is I think on the higher end of what's available, but you got to be over the $1 million to $2 million profit EBITDA.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, a lot of times, like, for me, like, my personal brand is kinda tied to my agency, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of times people think that that's kind of risky, right? Because if you ever go to sell, like, I think, for me, I think it was more of an advantage, because I was of the mindset of, like, I'm not going anywhere, I
Yeah.
mean? You're investing in my company, but you're all investing in me, right? And I
Mhm.
feel like my personal brand can help take us, faster to go out and acquire other agencies, to leverage my relationships in legal, right? And so, I think in my case, I think I got a higher multiple as a result of kind of having a personal brand, right? So don't be fearful of kind of building a brand, a personal brand. Mhm.
No doubt. People want to do business with the best of the best in their industry, which means you have to be known as the best of the best in your industry. That's not going to be harder for you to sell. It's going to be more valuable for you to sell potentially in the future. Very
Mhm.
pointed question here from Eric. He says, Jason, why did you decide to sell? It's interesting. I also run an agency in the legal space. I was contacted by the VC firm that bought the agency.
Mhm.
Anyways, I don't plan to sell, is what he's saying. But like, what was it that prompted you to sell?
Yeah. So for me, like I always realize that, like, when you bootstrapping a business, there comes a point where you have to bring in capital. I think if you
Mhm.
really want to take your business to the next level, right? Because there's a whole time value of money, right? And so for us, like, we knew that, like, we were kind of at that point where if we really wanted to take it to the next level, it would be that time to kind of go and bring in, either take an investment, sell the business, whatever. And so for us, like I said, it was like a 3-year journey. And when we were approached by Herringbone Digital, I was looking at it like, I'm either going to compete with this group, right, with not the same type of resources that they have, right,
Mhm.
or I can join them, right, and I can get on this train, and it's a fast train, and it's, and so for me, it just kind of made sense. The timing was right, and but it's not always the case, right? I mean, like, we've met with, and it's funny, like in the past, like we met with private equity groups that really wanted to buy us when our EBITDA was like $1 million, right? We weren't really focused on profitability. They would have been stealing us at that point because we knew that we were kind of setting up for growth, we were deferring profits to kind of, and so it's funny, my coach, Cameron, at the time, I'm like, look, we got this private equity group that really wants to buy us. He goes, okay. He goes, well, are you for sale? I'm like, well, not really, but we're always for sale. He goes, what are they asking? I'm like, well, they only want like 12 questions. You know what I mean? He goes, don't do that. He goes, that's going to be a distraction. You know what I mean? Like, next thing you know, now your CFO is going to have to be pulling reports and things like that. He goes, don't do that. That's a distraction. He goes, if you're not for sale, but you kind of are for sale, just give them your number. You know what I mean? I'm
Mhm.
like, okay. I'm like, 75 million, right? We fired over, right? When we only have like 1 million in EBITDA, they're like, oh, haha, that's great. Let's continue the conversation, right? We just knew, like, like, that's kind of the goal. Like, we expect us to be there in a couple of years, right?
Mhm.
And so, anyway, I would just, always entertain the calls, because you can certainly learn from at least starting those conversations, for sure.
Super good. All right. So
Mhm.
John's asking, did you acquire smaller agencies as part of your growth, or was it purely through direct sales and organic growth?
For us, we didn't acquire anybody. So, in hindsight, that probably would have been a smart move, right? If you can acquire other agencies for like a 2 or 3 time multiple and sell for a higher multiple, right? I mean, that's kind of like, the private equity model, right? I
Mhm.
wish I would have kind of known that earlier on. But at the same time, like, that would have probably deferred our growth, right? Because I was putting all that money back into my business, right? And so anyway, it could have been a distraction too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So good. Lots of great questions, guys. Thanks for engaging. Man, Jason, this has been awesome. Congratulations on growing to 20 million. Thanks for your willingness to come on here and share exactly how you've grown, exactly how you scaled, how you were able to position the agency for a massive exit, and kind of where you're headed next. Because it sounds like there's even much bigger, better things ahead for Jason, Jason's clients, Jason's team. Really excited to see you at the Seven Figure Agency Intensive in October, you and Raj and the team at Herringbone Digital. If you had one last piece of insight or wisdom for the agency owner that's trying to get to the next level, what would that be?
So I always like every morning I wake up and I have the mindset that, I have the power to create a future that is not going to exist, right? And how I do that is I take action, right? And so if you wake up in that morning and you have that same mindset, right? Like what are the two action items that you can take today, right? That's going to create a future that, would not have existed otherwise. Like what are those two things that you can do, right? So, that might be sending an unsolicited email to like your dream clients, right? And maybe getting a response, right? Like that's the action that I'm taking, right? Like what are those two or three things that you can do, right? And so every day, like I live that mindset and, every single day you continue to do that, you're going to create that future, I assure you. So I would say, create that future that wasn't going to exist anyway and go take action.
So good. Great insight. Jason, thanks again. Pumped to see you in a couple of weeks. If you want to connect with Jason further, find him on LinkedIn, send him a friend request or a connection request, and the conversation continues. Jason, thanks so much.
Thank
We'll
you,
talk to you
Josh.
again real
Appreciate
soon.
it.
Thanks, everybody.